In the bustling village of Umuoji, known for its lively Eke market, lived a man named Emeka. Emeka was a meat seller at the market, and his arrival had brought a strange unease to the once peaceful community. He was a man in his late 30s, living alone, without a wife or children. What caught everyone's attention was the incredibly low price and high quality of his meat. People flocked to his store, and Emeka would always sell out his entire stock before the day ended. The other meat sellers in Eke market couldn't hide their envy and bewilderment. They constantly wondered where Emeka saw such excellent meat and how he could afford to sell it so cheaply. Adding to the mystery was Emeka's peculiar behavior with his earnings. Despite making a lot of money from his booming meat business, he lived in a rundown hut and always wore tattered clothes. This stark contrast between his apparent wealth and his lifestyle deeply intrigued one of his fellow meat sellers, a sharp and observant woman named Ngozi. Ngozi couldn't shake off her curiosity about what Emeka did with all his money. She decided to uncover the secret behind his cheap meat and his strange way of life. One market day, as the trading came to a close, Emeka packed his unsold meat and started heading towards his home on the outskirts of the village. Ngozi, who had been patiently waiting, discreetly followed him. Emeka, completely unaware of being trailed, reached his hut, unlocked the door, and went inside. Ngozi cautiously approached the hut and peered through a crack in the window. A peculiar, unpleasant smell wafted from inside. She saw Emeka walk over to a very large, soot-covered pot. He lifted the lid and muttered to himself, "Oh, it seems my supply is getting low. I will need to get more soon." Then, he quickly closed the pot. Ngozi's mind raced. Could this pot be the source of his endless supply of cheap meat? She waited anxiously for Emeka to leave the main room. As soon as he disappeared into another part of the hut, Ngozi quietly slipped inside and cautiously approached the large pot. She took a deep breath and lifted the heavy lid. Suddenly, she heard Emeka's voice booming, "Who is there?" Panic seized Ngozi, and she turned and fled from the hut as fast as her legs could carry her, her heart pounding like a drum. She didn't stop running until she reached her own house. The image of what she had glimpsed inside the pot burned into her memory. The next day at the market, Ngozi tried to act normal, but a knot of unease tightened in her stomach. She couldn't help but steal glances at Emeka, who seemed his usual self, cheerfully selling his meat to the customers. However, Ngozi's curiosity had now turned into a chilling suspicion. She knew she had to find out the truth, no matter the risk. That evening, as Emeka packed up, Ngozi followed him again, this time being even more careful to stay hidden in the shadows. When Emeka entered his hut, Ngozi watched from a distance before slowly creeping closer to the window. She peered inside and saw Emeka in his small kitchen, hacking at something on a wooden board. A wave of nausea washed over Ngozi as she realized that the substance looked disturbingly like raw meat, but different. Suddenly, Emeka turned his head sharply and looked directly towards the window. Ngozi instantly ducked down, her breath catching in her throat. Had he seen her this time? She waited, holding her breath, praying he hadn't. After a tense few minutes, she cautiously peeked again. Emeka was no longer in the kitchen. She heard footsteps approaching the window and, in a moment of pure fear, she ran. She didn't stop until she was safely inside her own house, locking the door behind her. Sitting down heavily, Ngozi knew she couldn't keep this terrifying secret to herself. She had to tell someone, but who would believe such a horrifying tale about the well-liked meat seller, Emeka? Finally, she decided to confide in her closest friend, Ifeoma. The next morning, Ngozi went to Ifeoma's house, her voice trembling as she recounted everything she had seen and suspected. Ifeoma listened in stunned silence, her face pale with shock. They both agreed that they needed to gather more solid proof before going to the village elders or the authorities. They devised a plan. They would take turns observing Emeka, hoping to uncover more evidence of his sinister activities. Ngozi would watch him one day, and Ifeoma the next. For the next few days, they kept a close watch on Emeka. They noticed that he would often leave his hut late at night, going towards the dense forest beyond the village. However, fear held them back from following him into the darkness. What could a meat seller be doing in the forest in the dead of night? One night, it was Ifeoma's turn to observe Emeka. She watched as he left the market and returned to his hut. Staying hidden, she cautiously approached his window after he went inside. She saw Emeka in his kitchen, chopping meat as usual, but this time he was muttering to himself. Ifeoma strained her ears to hear. "I need to find another one soon. The supply is dwindling again," a cold dread washed over Ifeoma. Quickly, she pulled out her small phone and managed to snap a few blurry pictures of Emeka with the strange-looking meat. Then, she hurried back to Ngozi to share her horrifying discovery. Ngozi and Ifeoma knew they needed more than just pictures, they needed undeniable proof. They decided to set a trap for Emeka. The next day, Ngozi approached Emeka at his stall in the market. "Emeka," she said with a forced smile, "I hear you have the finest meat in Umuoji. I have a large family gathering soon and would like to place a very big order." Emeka's face lit up. "Of course, Ngozi. How much meat will you need?" Ngozi gave him a quantity that she knew would require him to replenish his mysterious stock. "I will need it by tomorrow evening," she added. "Consider it done," Emeka replied confidently. "I will ensure it is the best meat you have ever tasted." That evening, Ngozi and Ifeoma followed Emeka again. Just as they suspected, he left his hut late at night, carrying a large, heavy sack. They watched as he disappeared into the dark woods beyond the village. They waited for what seemed like an eternity, their hearts pounding with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Finally, Emeka emerged from the forest, dragging the heavy sack behind him. He made his way back to his hut, and the two women watched as he went inside. They knew they had to act now. They rushed to the village elder's house and recounted their terrifying experiences, presenting the blurry photographs as evidence. Initially, the elders were skeptical, but Ngozi and Ifeoma's genuine fear and the unsettling pictures convinced them to alert the authorities. The next day, the police arrived at Emeka's hut with a warrant. They knocked repeatedly, but there was no answer. They forced the door open and entered the small, foul-smelling dwelling. The hut appeared empty, but a thorough search led them to the large, soot-covered pot in the corner. With trepidation, they lifted the heavy lid. Inside, they were met with a gruesome sight, the chopped-up remains of several human bodies. Horror gripped the officers, and they immediately called for backup. Meanwhile, Emeka was at the market, calmly selling his usual stock of meat. The police arrived swiftly and arrested him in front of the stunned villagers. Disbelief and shock rippled through the crowd as they witnessed the arrest of the seemingly ordinary meat seller. At the police station, Emeka initially denied everything. However, faced with the overwhelming evidence, he eventually broke down and confessed to his horrific crimes. He chillingly explained that he had been luring people into the forest, killing them, and then selling their flesh as meat in the market. He confessed that he had done it purely for money. The entire village of Umuoji was plunged into mourning and disbelief. The families of the victims were devastated by the gruesome truth. Emeka was swiftly brought to justice and sentenced to life imprisonment. In the months that followed, Umuoji slowly began to heal. Ngozi and Ifeoma were hailed as brave heroines for their courage and vigilance in uncovering the horrifying truth. The village learned a painful but vital lesson about the darkness that can sometimes hide behind a familiar face. They vowed to be more watchful and to always support each other, ensuring that such a tragedy would never happen again. As for Emeka, he remained in prison, forever haunted by his unspeakable crimes and the faces of his victims. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this story. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and let me know your favorite part in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. See you in the next story.